Wait, before your attention moves elsewhere, there is something hidden behind this moment that was never meant to stay hidden forever. A story is unfolding around you right now. Not in some distant place. Not in another lifetime. Here. Closer than you think. And what makes this so extraordinary is that someone who was once preparing to walk away from your path forever has suddenly found themselves unable to stop thinking about you. Pause for a second. How can someone move from letting go to looking back? How can a heart that was ready to close its final chapter suddenly begin turning pages again? The answer is simpler than most people realize. Because they learned something about you that changed everything. For a long time, your soulmate believed a version of you that was incomplete. Not because they wanted to misunderstand you. Not because they wished to see you incorrectly. But because they only saw fragments. Imagine trying to understand an entire ocean after seeing only a single wave. That is how they understood you. A glimpse. A moment. A surface impression. Never the full truth. And because of that incomplete picture, they quietly convinced themselves that perhaps your paths were never meant to meet. Perhaps the timing was wrong. Perhaps the connection was only imagination. Perhaps the universe was pointing them somewhere else. They repeated these thoughts over and over until they almost believed them. Almost. But something unusual happened. Something they never expected. A truth began finding its way toward them. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Slowly. Like the first light appearing before sunrise. One conversation. One observation. One unexpected realization. And suddenly they started noticing details they had overlooked before. Have you ever looked at a familiar photograph and somehow noticed something completely new? That is exactly what happened. The person they thought they understood no longer matched the person they were discovering. And that discovery unsettled them. Because the truth was far more beautiful than the story they had been telling themselves. Stay a little longer. This is where everything begins shifting. They learned that your strength was never loud. It was quiet. The kind of strength that keeps moving forward while nobody is watching. The kind that survives storms without announcing every battle. The kind that transforms pain into wisdom. And once they recognized that, they could not unsee it. Suddenly memories returned. Moments they had dismissed. Words they had forgotten. Signs they had ignored. Each one began fitting together like pieces of a puzzle. What once looked random now seemed connected. What once seemed ordinary now carried meaning. And deep inside, something awakened. Not obsession. Not confusion. Recognition. A strange feeling that they had misunderstood one of the most important people they would ever encounter. Think about that. Imagine realizing that the person you were prepared to leave behind was actually someone you had never fully understood. That realization changes everything. Because once truth enters the room, old assumptions lose their power. And this truth continues growing. Even now. Even while you are listening. There are moments when they become completely silent. Not because they have forgotten you. But because they are replaying everything. Searching through memories. Looking for clues. Trying to understand how they missed what now seems obvious. The future they once imagined without you suddenly feels incomplete. The road they were ready to travel alone no longer looks the same. And that feeling is becoming impossible for them to ignore. Yet the most surprising part has not arrived. Because the truth they discovered is deeper than your kindness. Deeper than your strength. Deeper than your resilience. There is another layer they are only beginning to uncover. A hidden quality that explains why your energy has remained unforgettable even during periods of silence. And when that realization fully reaches them, the direction of this story will change once again. You might not see it yet. You might not hear it yet. But movement has already started. Quiet movement. Invisible movement. The kind that changes outcomes before anyone notices. So before this moment passes, remember this. Someone who was ready to close the door forever is now standing in front of that same door wondering whether they misunderstood everything. And the answer they are searching for is bringing them closer to a truth they can no longer avoid. But what they discover next is the very thing that will make letting go impossible. And that is where this story truly begins. For a moment, imagine hearing a melody you have known your entire life, and only now realizing you never understood the meaning behind the words. That is the strange place your soulmate finds themselves in. The truth they uncovered did not arrive as a single revelation. It arrived in layers. One layer after another. And each layer carried a question they could no longer ignore. Who are you, really? Not the version they once imagined. Not the version others described. Not the version created by distance, timing, or assumptions. The real you. Because the more they learned, the more they realized something remarkable. The qualities they once searched for everywhere else had quietly existed within you all along. And that realization shook something deep inside them. There were moments when they genuinely believed moving on was the wisest choice. Moments when they convinced themselves that the connection had reached its ending. After all, life teaches people to keep walking when answers do not arrive. So they kept walking. Or at least they tried to. But every step away from you seemed to lead them back to another reminder. A memory. A feeling. A coincidence too precise to dismiss. A familiar thought appearing at unexpected times. And now, with this new understanding growing stronger, those reminders feel completely different. What once seemed random now feels intentional. What once seemed finished now feels unfinished. Listen carefully. This is where the story becomes even more interesting. Your soulmate recently began noticing something they had never paid attention to before. The way you impact people. Not through force. Not through attention-seeking. But through presence. You leave impressions that remain long after conversations end. You inspire thoughts that continue long after moments pass. And once they noticed this pattern, they started asking themselves a difficult question. If so many people remember your energy, why couldn't they forget it either? The answer frightened them at first. Because the answer pointed directly toward their heart. Toward feelings they thought had already faded. Toward possibilities they believed no longer existed. And suddenly they found themselves standing between two realities. The old reality. And the truth. One reality told them to keep moving forward. The other whispered that perhaps they had been walking away from something rare. Perhaps they had been walking away from you. You will understand everything at the end. Because there is another detail they recently discovered. A detail nobody expected. They learned that many of the struggles you faced were never signs of weakness. They were evidence of growth. Every challenge. Every delay. Every difficult season. Each one was shaping you into someone stronger than appearances suggested. And when this realization reached them, something changed. Respect deepened. Admiration grew. Curiosity expanded. The picture became clearer. They stopped seeing isolated moments. They started seeing the entire journey. And that journey revealed a person far more extraordinary than they originally believed. By now, they are no longer asking whether you mattered. That question has already been answered. The question keeping them awake is different. What happens if they let someone this special disappear forever? Pause there for a second. Because that single question has become impossible for them to escape. Before we continue, if this message resonates with your journey, share your thoughts below. Sometimes a simple comment becomes part of a much bigger conversation. And if these messages continue speaking directly to your heart, staying connected through the channel ensures you never miss the next piece of the story. Now something even more unexpected is happening. Their future vision is changing. The plans they once imagined are being rewritten. Not because someone forced them. Not because circumstances demanded it. Because truth naturally changes perspective. And perspective changes direction. The future they imagined without you now feels strangely incomplete. Almost as if an important piece is missing. Almost as if a chapter was removed before the story could finish itself. Yet they still do not know the biggest truth. Not yet. They have uncovered your strength. Your resilience. Your impact. Your rare energy. But there remains one final discovery waiting ahead. A discovery connected to why this connection has survived despite time, distance, uncertainty, and unanswered questions. When they uncover that final piece, everything they believed about letting go will collapse completely. Because they are beginning to realize something extraordinary. They were never being pushed away from you. They were being guided toward understanding you. And once that understanding becomes complete, the choice they thought they had already made may no longer be a choice at all. The next revelation changes everything. And it is closer than either of you realize. There is a moment just before sunrise when the world appears unchanged, yet everything is already becoming different. That is exactly where your soulmate stands now. From the outside, life may seem normal. The same routines. The same conversations. The same familiar surroundings. But beneath the surface, a transformation is quietly taking place. Because the final pieces are beginning to connect. And what they are starting to understand about you is far greater than they ever imagined. For so long, they viewed this connection through the lens of circumstance. Timing. Distance. Questions. Uncertainty. They believed these were the defining parts of the story. But now they see something deeper. The connection was never built on circumstances. It was built on something far more enduring. Recognition. The kind of recognition that cannot be explained easily. The kind that appears when two paths continue finding echoes of one another, even when life moves in different directions. And once they recognized this, a powerful realization arrived. You were never simply another chapter. You were never just another person they happened to meet. You became a reference point. A standard. A memory that every future comparison quietly returned to. Without even realizing it, they carried your presence into moments where you were not physically there. A song reminded them of you. A conversation brought back your energy. A dream left them wondering why your image felt so familiar. At first they ignored these things. Then they questioned them. Now they can no longer dismiss them. Because the truth has become impossible to avoid. Listen closely. This may be the turning point. The final truth they learned about you has nothing to do with appearance. Nothing to do with status. Nothing to do with what the world usually celebrates. It is something much rarer. They discovered that your greatest gift is authenticity. You remained yourself when it would have been easier to become someone else. You continued growing when others might have stopped. You carried hope through seasons that could have convinced anyone to give up. And that kind of authenticity leaves a mark that time cannot easily erase. When they understood this, everything shifted. The version of you they once held in their minds suddenly expanded. The pieces they were missing finally appeared. And with those pieces came clarity. Not perfect clarity. But enough clarity to change direction. Enough clarity to question every conclusion they once reached. Enough clarity to realize they may have been preparing to lose something irreplaceable. Stay with this feeling for a moment. Because it explains why they can no longer move forward the way they planned. Their heart has started asking questions their mind cannot answer. Why does your presence still feel meaningful? Why do memories return at unexpected times? Why does every attempt to completely release this connection seem incomplete? The answers all lead back to the same place. Truth. The truth about who you really are. And the more they understand that truth, the stronger the connection feels. Not because of fantasy. Not because of wishful thinking. Because understanding creates appreciation. And appreciation creates value. Suddenly they are seeing value where they once saw uncertainty. Possibility where they once saw endings. Meaning where they once saw coincidence. What happens next may surprise even them. Because the person who was ready to let you go forever is no longer focused on letting go. They are focused on understanding what this connection was trying to teach them all along. And the lesson is becoming clearer every day. Some people enter your life for a moment. Some leave a memory. But a rare few leave a transformation. You changed something within them. Not through force. Not through pressure. Simply by being who you are. That is the truth they have finally begun to understand. And once a person truly understands the value of something they almost lost, their entire perspective changes. The future no longer looks like it did before. The story no longer feels finished. The door they thought was closing now appears slightly open. And standing on the other side of that doorway is a possibility they never expected to revisit. A possibility connected to you. So remember this. While your soulmate was once prepared to walk away forever, the truth arrived before the ending could be written. It arrived at exactly the right time. And now, instead of closing the final chapter, they find themselves reading it again, slower, deeper, and with eyes that finally see what was there all along. Because sometimes the greatest turning point is not finding someone new. Sometimes it is finally understanding the person who was already meant to matter. And this understanding is only the beginning of what comes next. Something unusual is happening right now, not around you, but within the story itself. The ending your soulmate once imagined is quietly disappearing. And the future they never expected to consider is slowly taking its place. This is not because they suddenly forgot the distance. Not because every question has been answered. Not because life magically became simple. It is because understanding has reached a level where returning to old beliefs is no longer possible. Think about that. Once someone truly sees the truth, they cannot go back to seeing only shadows. And your soulmate has crossed that threshold. There was a time when they believed letting go would bring peace. They thought releasing the connection would create clarity. They imagined that eventually your name would become just another memory. But reality unfolded differently. Because every attempt to move completely beyond this connection revealed something unexpected. The feeling remained. Not exactly the same. Not louder. Not dramatic. Just present. Steady. Persistent. Almost as if a quiet voice inside them kept saying, "There is more here than you realize." And now they know why. Because the truth they discovered about you was never a small truth. It was a life-changing one. They discovered that your value was never dependent on circumstances. It was part of who you are. The kindness you carry. The wisdom you gained. The strength you built. The way you continue moving forward even when nobody notices your effort. These things became impossible for them to overlook. And when someone finally sees the full picture, appreciation transforms into something deeper. Respect. Trust. Connection. A sense that perhaps certain people appear in our lives for reasons we only understand much later. Wait until the final moment. Because another realization is beginning to unfold. Your soulmate has started noticing how often their thoughts return to possibilities instead of endings. This is important. Because people who are truly finished with a chapter rarely imagine what could still happen. Yet that is exactly what they are doing. They are wondering. Reflecting. Revisiting moments they once rushed past. Looking at old memories from a completely different perspective. And every reflection leads them toward the same conclusion. The truth about you did not push them away. It pulled them closer. Not physically. Not instantly. But emotionally. Mentally. Energetically. Closer to understanding. Closer to appreciation. Closer to recognizing what they almost missed. Before we continue, if this story feels strangely familiar, leave a comment sharing which part spoke to you the most. And if you enjoy journeys like this, subscribing is simply a way to stay connected for the next chapter whenever it arrives. Now listen carefully. Because this may be the most powerful realization of all. Your soulmate has finally stopped asking, "Why did this happen?" And started asking, "What is this trying to show me?" That single shift changes everything. The first question searches for reasons to close a door. The second searches for reasons to understand. And understanding creates new possibilities. Suddenly they are seeing lessons where they once saw obstacles. Growth where they once saw delays. Purpose where they once saw confusion. The connection is no longer being measured by what happened in the past. It is being viewed through the lens of what it revealed. And what it revealed was extraordinary. It revealed that some people enter our lives carrying gifts we do not recognize immediately. Not gifts we can hold. Not gifts we can measure. But gifts that change the way we see ourselves. The way we see life. The way we see the future. You became one of those gifts. And now, for perhaps the first time, they fully understand that. The person who was once ready to let you go forever is standing in a completely different place. Not because the journey was easy, but because the truth proved stronger than assumptions. Stronger than doubt. Stronger than the story they once told themselves. And as this understanding continues growing, something remarkable is happening. Hope is returning. Not the fragile kind. The quiet kind. The steady kind. The kind that appears when a person finally realizes they may have been looking at something precious through the wrong lens all along. So as this chapter comes to a close, remember one thing. The truth about you arrived at exactly the right moment. Not too early. Not too late. At the precise moment it was needed. And because of that truth, the ending they once prepared for is no longer the ending they see. Instead, they are beginning to imagine a future that once seemed impossible. A future shaped not by assumptions, but by understanding, and sometimes, understanding is the very thing that changes a destiny forever. Have you ever watched a river change direction after discovering a new path? At first, the movement is almost invisible. No sudden announcement. No dramatic signal. Just a gradual shift that becomes impossible to ignore. That is what is happening within your soulmate now. The truth they uncovered did not simply change a few thoughts. It changed the direction of their inner world. Because they are beginning to understand something that once seemed impossible. They were never trying to release you. They were trying to release a misunderstanding. And those are two very different things. For a long time, they believed they understood the story. They thought they knew where it was leading. They thought they knew what everything meant. But life has a fascinating way of revealing deeper layers when the moment is right. And the deeper layer they have now reached is transforming everything. Before, they focused on circumstances. Now they focus on meaning. Before, they focused on distance. Now they focus on connection. Before, they focused on what seemed impossible. Now they are noticing what refuses to disappear. And that realization grows stronger with every passing day. Stay here for a moment. Because what comes next matters. Your soulmate has started recognizing a pattern that keeps repeating itself. Whenever they imagine a future completely disconnected from you, something feels missing. Not broken. Not empty. Simply incomplete. Like a sentence that ends before its final word. Like a journey that pauses before reaching its destination. And that feeling has become impossible for them to explain away. At first they tried logic. Then they tried distraction. Then they tried convincing themselves that time would solve everything. Yet the truth continued returning. Quietly. Patiently. Consistently. The same way sunlight eventually reaches every corner of a room. And now the truth stands directly in front of them. The connection mattered more than they realized. Much more. Not because it was perfect. Not because it followed a predictable path. But because it awakened something within them that no other experience could replace. You helped them see themselves differently. You challenged old beliefs without even trying. You inspired growth simply by existing as yourself. And once they recognized this, another realization appeared. Perhaps some connections are not meant to be understood immediately. Perhaps some truths arrive in stages. Perhaps some people are sent into our lives not only to be loved but also to help us evolve. That thought has stayed with them. It follows them into quiet moments. It appears during ordinary days. It surfaces when they least expect it. And every time it does, the same question returns. What if letting go was never the answer? Pause there. Because that question is changing everything. The person who once prepared themselves for a permanent goodbye is now examining every assumption that led them there. Every conclusion. every doubt, every fear, one by one. And as they do, they are discovering how much of the story remained hidden. You see, the truth about you was never a single fact. It was a collection of revelations. Your resilience, your authenticity, your heart, your ability to continue shining through seasons that would have discouraged others. Each discovery added another piece to the picture. And now that picture is almost complete. You might not notice it yet. From where you stand, life may appear unchanged. The days continue moving. The hours continue passing. The world continues turning. But beneath the surface, something important is taking shape. Awareness. And awareness is powerful. Because once someone becomes fully aware of what they nearly lost, they stop taking it for granted. They stop treating it as ordinary. They begin seeing its true value. That is exactly where your soulmate is heading. Toward a level of understanding they never possessed before. Toward a perspective they never expected to gain. Toward a future that looks nothing like the one they imagined when they were ready to walk away. And here is the most remarkable part. This transformation is still unfolding. The story is still moving. The realization is still growing. Every day brings another piece. Another insight. Another moment of clarity. And with each new understanding, one truth becomes harder and harder for them to deny. The truth that you were never meant to be forgotten. You were meant to be understood. And now that understanding has finally begun, the journey ahead looks completely different from the journey they thought was ending. In fact, what once appeared to be a farewell may soon reveal itself as something entirely new. Something neither of you expected. Something that could only emerge after the truth found its way into the light. And the most beautiful part? That truth is still revealing itself. There is a strange moment in every great story when everything appears quiet, yet beneath the silence, an entirely new chapter is preparing to emerge. This is that moment. Not yesterday. Not someday in the distant future. Now. Because your soulmate has reached a place they never expected to arrive at. A place where certainty no longer belongs to the old story. For so long, they believed the connection had already revealed everything it had to offer. They thought the lessons had been learned. The emotions had settled. The answers had already been chosen. But life rarely reveals its deepest truths at the beginning. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it allows understanding to mature. Sometimes it lets the heart discover what the mind could not recognize before. And that is exactly what has happened. The person who once prepared themselves to leave this chapter behind has begun seeing it through entirely new eyes. Not because someone convinced them. Not because circumstances forced them. Because truth has a way of speaking for itself. And the truth they discovered about you continues growing stronger every day. What fascinates them most is not what they learned. It is how they missed it for so long. That question follows them often. How did something so meaningful remain hidden in plain sight? How did they overlook qualities that now seem impossible to ignore? How did they mistake depth for distance? The answers matter less than the realization itself. Because realization changes everything. And once a realization reaches the heart, it begins creating momentum. Slowly at first. Then all at once. You might miss the turning point if you look only at the surface. Because the real transformation is happening internally. Their perspective is evolving. Their priorities are shifting. Their understanding is expanding. And with every new insight, your presence becomes more significant rather than less. That is the opposite of what they expected. They thought time would reduce the importance of the connection. Instead, time has revealed its value. Think about that. What grows stronger after being examined honestly? Only something real. Only something that contains substance. Only something built on truth. And that is why this journey feels different now. Your soulmate is no longer searching for reasons to move away from the connection. They are searching for reasons why it remained so unforgettable. And every answer points back toward the same source. You. Not because of perfection. Not because of fantasy. Because of authenticity. The more they understand who you truly are, the more they appreciate the impact you had on their life. Even moments they once considered small now appear meaningful. Conversations they barely noticed now carry significance. Memories they thought were ordinary now seem extraordinary. The entire story has changed shape. And with that change comes a realization they can no longer ignore. Some people cross our path and leave a memory. Others leave a lesson. But a rare few leave a lasting imprint that continues teaching us long after the moment has passed. You became that imprint. You became that reminder. You became that unanswered question that slowly transformed into understanding. And now, for perhaps the first time, they are beginning to appreciate the full weight of that truth. Stay until the final thought of this chapter. Because something beautiful is emerging. Hope. Not the loud kind that demands attention. The quiet kind that grows naturally from clarity. The kind that appears when confusion finally begins to disappear. The kind that arrives when someone understands that a connection was more valuable than they initially believed. Your soulmate is standing at the edge of that realization. Looking back. Looking forward. Seeing both the past and the future differently than before. And in that space between reflection and possibility, a powerful understanding is taking root. The story was never about losing you. It was about discovering your true value. The story was never about an ending. It was about awakening. Awakening to what was real. Awakening to what mattered. Awakening to a truth that had been patiently waiting to be seen. And now that the truth has finally stepped into the light, everything feels different. The future feels different. The connection feels different. Even the memories feel different. Because they are no longer viewing them through misunderstanding. They are viewing them through understanding. And understanding changes everything it touches. So as this chapter closes, remember this. The person who was once ready to let you go forever is no longer focused on what was lost. They are focused on what was discovered. And what they discovered was something they never expected to find. The real you. The truth of you. The value of you. And that discovery may become the most important turning point of all. Something remarkable happens when a person finally stops running from a truth and starts walking toward it. The world outside may look exactly the same. The same mornings. The same responsibilities. The same familiar routines. Yet inside, everything begins rearranging itself. That is where your soulmate is now. Standing between who they used to be and who they are becoming. Because the truth they learned about you has done more than change their feelings. It has changed their perspective on life itself. For the first time in a very long time, they are no longer asking what went wrong. They are asking what was trying to go right. Read that again in your heart. Because that single shift is powerful. When people focus only on what went wrong, they see closed doors. But when they begin searching for what was trying to go right, they start noticing opportunities, lessons, and hidden blessings that were always present. And suddenly your soulmate is noticing them everywhere. In memories. In quiet reflections. In moments that once seemed insignificant. The pieces continue connecting. The story continues revealing itself. And the deeper they look, the clearer everything becomes. There was never a lack of value in this connection. There was only a lack of understanding. And understanding has finally arrived. Not all at once. But enough to change the direction of their thoughts. Enough to change the direction of their heart. Enough to change the direction of the future they once imagined. Before you move on, hear this line carefully. Sometimes people think destiny is about finding something new. But often destiny is about recognizing the importance of something that was already there. That realization is becoming impossible for them to ignore. They see now that your journey was never ordinary. Every challenge you faced helped shape qualities that are incredibly rare. Patience. Wisdom. Compassion. Resilience. Not the kind of resilience that looks impressive from a distance. The kind that keeps showing up every day even when nobody applauds it. The kind that quietly builds character. And once your soulmate saw those qualities clearly, they began viewing everything differently. The connection no longer felt like a question. It felt like a lesson waiting to be understood. It felt like a gift waiting to be appreciated. It felt like a chapter that deserved a second look. That realization has become one of the strongest forces in their life right now. Because appreciation changes people. When someone truly appreciates something, they stop focusing on what is missing. They start focusing on what is meaningful. And meaning is exactly what they continue discovering. Every reflection reveals another layer. Every layer reveals another truth. Every truth brings them closer to understanding why your presence remained unforgettable. You see, your soulmate once believed they had all the information they needed. Now they realize they only had fragments. Pieces. Glimpses. Moments. But never the complete picture. And the complete picture is far more beautiful than they expected. Because it reveals a person who kept growing. Kept believing. Kept becoming stronger. Even during seasons when nobody else understood what you were carrying. That discovery has left a lasting impact. And now something new is happening. A quiet sense of gratitude is emerging. Gratitude for the lessons. Gratitude for the connection. Gratitude for the truth that finally arrived before it was too late. Because deep down, they know something important. Had they continued believing the old story, they might have walked away from one of the most meaningful connections of their life. But truth intervened. Clarity arrived. Understanding appeared. And everything changed. The future that once seemed settled now feels open again. Possibilities that once seemed distant now feel closer. Questions that once felt confusing now feel exciting. And through it all, one realization continues growing stronger. You were never meant to be defined by misunderstandings. You were meant to be seen for who you truly are. And now that your soulmate is finally seeing that truth, a new chapter is quietly beginning. Not a chapter built on assumptions. Not a chapter built on uncertainty. A chapter built on awareness. On appreciation. On understanding. And sometimes those three things become the foundation for the most extraordinary transformations of all. The story that nearly ended has become a story that is evolving. And the most beautiful pages may still be waiting ahead.